ESL Writing Workshop. The response from both students and teachers who have used this writing workshop approach to an ESL writing class has been overwhelmingly positive. Before I tell you the details about how to organize a writing workshop in your class, let me describe some of the many advantages it has over the more traditional approaches to teaching a writing course. Let's start with the students. In more traditional classes, the teacher is the focus, talking to the whole class, perhaps showing samples of writing projected on a screen, perhaps pointing out good writing techniques and styles. Meanwhile, the students are in their seats, maybe taking notes or more likely thinking about social media or their weekend plans. Oftentimes, during a traditional approach, as a class, they will do some writing or grammar exercises or read about writing. Then for homework, they might do some individual writing in which they apply what was discussed during the class. Many teachers who use this approach like it because they feel like they are real teachers and that this is what teachers do. They stand up front and talk. One of the major weaknesses of this teacher-centered approach is that it counts on one-size-fits-all approach. In other words, it's based on the assumption that every student has the same strengths and needs as writers, and thus all the students will benefit equally from whatever the teacher is presenting. However, nothing could be further from the truth. In our ESL classes, there is a huge variety of students' needs. Some students have the ability to write well-developed ideas but have problems with grammar and sentence styles. Others are the opposite. They have good control of their grammar but struggle with formulating and presenting ideas. Thus, a lockstep approach in which all the students are working at the same pace might be effective in a content course like history or math or psychology or economics because the teacher is teaching information which is probably new to all the students. But in ESL writing classes, we are teaching skills, and each individual student has unique strengths and weaknesses, even in the most homogeneous classes. That is why the workshop approach is so effective for teaching ESL writing. Let's look at some benefits first, and then I'll share with you specific ways, including sample lesson plans, for how you can implement this. According to psychologist Edward Deci on an NPR segment called Lost Secret, How to Get Kids to Pay Attention, the most important ingredient for motivating students is autonomy. The sense of being autonomous can produce a very positive effect on students' attitude, focus, and their performance. Best of all, it's very effective and quite easy to include this element in ESL classes. Having autonomy does not mean that students decide what is taught in a lesson. Instead, students can experience autonomy if the lesson is set up so that they can individually choose which exercise to do first, second, etc., how fast to work, when to ask the teacher a question or ask a teacher for help, and even when to take a break. So these are general steps for a writing workshop. I'll include a link below where you'll find this list along with a specific sample lesson with handouts that you can download. The teacher, let's say it's a female teacher, starts by telling the students that she is going to first explain the assignments for the day, and then they will have the rest of the class time to work individually on the assignments. And any assignments that they don't finish during class, they will do as homework. So, she starts with the first assignment. It could be practicing a writing technique, or a grammar for writing exercise, or perhaps working with a sample writing passage. The teacher explains the directions and perhaps does the first item whole class to make sure they understand what to do. But the students do not start the assignment yet. Depending on what the teacher would like to accomplish during the class time, she might want to assign a second and possibly third assignment in the same way as she did the first one. Again, the students don't start working on the assignment yet. Those first steps of explaining the assignment, might only take 5 to 10 minutes. Next, if the teacher has a short, small group activity, the students can do that. In the link below, I'll include some examples of productive small group activities for writing class. So if they do a small group activity, as each group finishes, because they'll probably finish at different times. Small groups usually don't finish all at the same time, but they'll finish at different times. As a group finishes, they don't have to wait for the other groups to finish. And the teacher doesn't have to rush everyone because, there's a couple groups that finished, we've got to hurry up and finish. So the ones who finish first simply return to their seats and start working individually on the assignments that the teacher had explained in steps 1 through 3. This is where autonomy kicks in. Students start the assignments by individually choosing which assignment they want to do first, second, third. Or they might start by making corrections of a homework assignment which the teacher had marked and returned. At any time, they can ask the teacher any question they might have and show him or her corrections from the returned assignment. If you are interested, please see my previous video entitled Most Effective Technique for Marking Grammar on Essays to Develop Self-Editing Skills for more details about this. I'll include a link below. So depending on the type of school or college that you teach at, it is possible for students to even take a break at any time. And now it's possible for the teacher to conference individually with each student. In my previous video, which I just referred to, Most Effective Technique for Marking Grammar and Essays to Develop Self-Editing Skills, I described a method for marking grammar on students' essays and explained how important it is for students to have a chance to talk to the teacher about the corrections. In other words, to have a conference with the teacher. I also explained that all conferencing can be accomplished during the class. It doesn't have to take any time outside of class for the teacher to do this. This workshop approach facilitates that. Let's look at some of the benefits of this approach. As you can see, each student works at his or her own pace. The faster students will probably finish most of the assignments during class, and thus they will have less homework. Also, when a class is teacher-centered and everyone does one exercise, check it whole class, and then all of them do the next exercise, check it whole class. Some students will finish the first exercise fast and will have to wait for the others to finish before the teacher can move on to the next one. This puts a lot of pressure on the slower ones to rush through the assignments. That's what happens in a teacher-centered class. In this kind of situation, the teacher is also aware when some students are finished and just sitting there waiting for the teacher to move on to the next exercise. Perhaps those early finishers start looking at their cell phones or start talking to a classmate or just look impatient. Can we blame students for this action? So the teacher in those teacher-fronted classes feels pressure to rush the slower ones, which means they probably won't have time to completely take advantage of the exercise. This problem with time is completely eliminated with the workshop approach. Everyone works at their own pace. When a student finishes an exercise, he just moves on to the next one, and the teacher can spend the time conferencing individually with the students. During the workshop, students don't have to raise their hands and ask a question in front of the whole class. Many students are hesitant to do this because they're afraid they'll look foolish. But during the one-on-one conference time, they get to ask their teacher any question they have. As we all know, some students become restless after some time of working and would like to take a break. But other students are focused on the exercises and would prefer to just keep working. With the workshop approach, we can accommodate each individual student's style of study. About the types of exercises, teachers can organize their lesson in a writing workshop using many different types of materials, but it seems to work best when using inductive exercises. That is because inductive exercises require little or no time taken up with the teacher lectures. In the link below, I'll share some samples of inductive exercises that are perfect for writing workshops. You can download them for free to use with your students. But as I had just said, almost any kind of materials will work well with the workshop approach. Whenever I've shared this workshop approach with colleagues and in presentations, someone always seems to ask, when students are supposed to be working individually on the assignments, won't some of them start goofing around and talking? I can understand that concern. Here is what actually seems to happen. First, students soon realize that if they focus on the assignments and finish during the class, they can actually reduce their homework load. And second, if they can see that the assignments are actually designed to help them improve their writing skills and are not just busy work, they will take them very seriously. All that said, I have used the workshop approach with classes in which some of the students were less than mature. And yes, a couple of them liked to chat with a classmate while others were trying to work. I was usually able to get the chatterers focused by individually pointing out to them that all the other students were trying to do their assignments, and it was kind of hard for them to do that if someone was talking. Almost always the chatterers were suddenly aware of the effect that they were having. Another thing I've been able to do is to tell the chatterers in a very quiet voice that it's fine if they need to talk, but they should go out in the hallway and do it. And I assure them that I won't be upset if they do that. To be realistic though, I've occasionally had energetic classes of students who all seemed excited about what they were writing or liked to work on correcting grammar mistakes on their essays with a classmate, or were just very interested in each other. There seemed to be a lot of positive energy in the classes, and I didn't want to stifle that. In those classes, there was a certain amount of noise, but it didn't seem to bother anyone. And I knew that because I checked individually with students and asked them, is this kind of noisy in here? Are you okay? And they would always assure me, no problem. Another concern that I've heard from teachers to whom I have introduced the workshop approach is that they might not have enough time to conference with each student during a class period. Actually, I almost never am able to talk to each student during one class period. But like many teachers, I've been able to successfully conduct a workshop with as many as 25 students. Here is what I do. During conferencing time, anytime a student is ready to conference with me, he or she writes his or her name on the board. Then I start at the top and work my way down. The ones who don't get time to conference on that day are the first ones that I conference with the next day. That has worked out very well. I don't have to rush through my time with a student because I'm trying to talk to everyone in the class. However, depending on how many students' names are on the list, I sometimes have to stop conferencing with an individual after a reasonable amount of time and ask him or her to write their name again on the board, so that we would continue the next class with him or her. Conferencing is such a rewarding experience for writing teachers. We have a chance to focus on each student's specific needs, and they seem grateful for the individualized attention. Typically, I'll have maybe one student who wanted more hints for helping him identify some grammar mistakes that I had coded on his essay. Maybe the next student will ask me to read a paragraph that she has written and see if I think the ideas are clear enough. And then another student will ask me to help him understand the directions for an exercise and to make sure he is doing it right. In sum, there is so much stimulating variety for the teacher during conferencing, and we can feel like we are making progress with each student. For more discussions about teaching ESL, please visit my blog, Common Sense ESL. I'm planning to continue to add more videos about teaching ESL conversation, writing, reading, and grammar to my channel, Student Centered Teaching ESL by David Kehe. Feel free to subscribe. See you next time.